Welcome to the Health and Healing Podcast with me, Sophia, where I talk all things to do with health and healing, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I share insights from personal stories, client wins, chats with other practitioners, and offer nourishing support for those navigating the healing path. Now, if you are wanting to feel healthier, more at home in your body, and in love with your life, then you are in the right place, my love. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to another podcast episode. Let us get settled in. So I invite you to grab yourself a nice cup of tea if you'd like. I have with me a Blue Lotus tea today. And today's topic I'm really excited to talk about because this has been such a big journey in my own life, navigating nutrition, navigating diet, and my relationship to food, and learning about how important our nutrition and our diet is when it comes to healing, when it comes to healing our body and taking care of our body. It plays such a big role, but it's not the only thing. There's layers to it. And yet, if you have an inflamed system and if you're experiencing challenges with health, diet can completely transform your life. And so specifically, I'm going to talk about some of the less extreme diets I've tried and some of the more extreme diets I've tried and how they have impacted my body, how they've impacted my life, and not just in terms of symptoms, but my whole relationship to food, my whole relationship to my body. It is so much bigger than just the symptoms. It's everything involved. And so I'm really, really excited to talk about this today. And today I'm also, just a little update. I'm trying this thing today where I've decided that it doesn't matter what I get done. It doesn't matter what I get done at all. My goal and my intention for today is to be so fully engaged in whatever I do that nothing else matters. And like how much joy, how much pleasure, how much fun can I bring into everything that I do? I'm not worried about the outcomes. I'm not worried about how good or bad anything is. I'm not worried about judgment or criticism. I just want to feel good and in my flow while I move around my day, whether it's creating, whether it's cooking, whether it's just doing day-to-day tasks for the house, all the things, right? And so, first of all, if you haven't tried that before, if you have a day off or even like a work day, whichever day you choose, give yourself this intention in the beginning. You can write a little bit about it. You can do some journaling. I did some journaling this morning of how you'd like to feel, what your intention is for the day. And if you can focus on, this is just one day out of your whole life and see what happens. If you can just focus on how much joy you can bring into every single moment of that day, how much joy you can bring into the tasks that you have to do, how much pleasure you can bring into your body, how much fun you can make the things in your life. Just try it and see what happens. So far, so good for me. I'm enjoying this. And yeah, get comfortable, set yourself up with a tea if you haven't already, go about your day as usual. You might like to write some notes. You can bring a journal and a pen. And let's dive into how extreme diets have changed my life or saved my life even. So, a little bit of backstory. I know I've already shared a bit about my journey with health, my experience with chronic health challenges, and how it really impacted my overall well-being. I had severe bloating. I looked like I was pregnant, like, a good 6, 7, 8 months pregnant every single day for years. I had like cramps in my colon. that were so bad at times I would be keeled over on the floor, or I would faint. I'd pass out from so much pain deep in my at the base of my digestive system. I had multiple injuries. I kept getting injured, and no matter what I would do, the pain would linger. The injuries would never heal. They would just get worse and worse and worse. It impacted my nerves, so I would have nerve pain. I had fatigue. I was waking up exhausted every single day. And I really struggled to just do anything at times. I somehow pushed through it, but there were days when if I had work or I had things on, I would end up on the couch resting for a day or a week. It depended. So I really struggled with my energy levels and constantly feeling really burnt out and wiped out and fatigued. I gained quite a lot of weight, probably like 20 kgs, and it was so much inflammation. I was constantly, and this really ties into diet, I was so hungry all the time. Even if, like, I had days where I would almost eat the whole day, even if I wasn't like physically hungry, like I felt full, my belly was like extended, but I just could not stop eating. I had this deep drive and this deep hunger, and I just could not stop eating. I also had the binge eating challenges where I would like had like an addictive relationship to food where I'd obsess about food. I'd think about it all day, how I was going to get this from the supermarket and watch this TV show or this movie and just block out the world for this many hours and just eat, 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 eat. I had this real kind of unhealthy relationship to food, and it was really a crutch for many years as well. I had PMS or borderline PMDD. I as a teenager lost my menstrual cycle for 3 years. Depression, anxiety, paranoia, hypervigilance. Honestly, I have like documents with pages of the symptoms that I have experienced. I kid you not, I have been through so many symptoms in my body, and so many symptoms that have lingered for months, for years. And I have moved through those and come to a place where I feel so much healthier in my body. And I still experience changes in my body. I still experience symptoms. I might get a cold every now and then, or I might get a flu every now and then, or I might have a little ache or a niggle somewhere, or a little bit of nerve pain. But I've come to this place where I know how to work with my body, how to trust my body, how to listen to my body, how to fuel my body with the proper nutrition, that those things that I once considered chronic illness, that I once considered chronic health conditions, I no longer feel that way about my body. I don't feel like I have a chronic health issue anymore. I feel good in my body. Do I sometimes face challenges? Do I sometimes get tired? Yes. But I just listen to that and I make adjustments and I honor my body's calling and I honor my body's needs. And I make it a part of my everyday life in terms of not calling it a bad thing, not making it mean there's something wrong with me, but just like, oh, this is where I'm at in my life today. This is the phase that I'm experiencing. This is what my body is calling for. And I'm okay with that. And then when you have that approach, you can take the emotional attachment to feeling like there's something wrong and bad with us away. You can start to resolve some of the shame, some of the like that, like the victimhood feeling, and really stepping into self-responsibility, stepping into your power. So that's just a little bit of an overview of some of the symptoms I've experienced and my history with being very familiar with chronic health challenges, which you could call them. And for many, many years, I've experienced that. And I've worked with nutrition and I've worked with diet firsthand. I also did a health coaching certification, but I also saw many practitioners. But ultimately, the biggest changes I experienced through nutrition were the self-led changes, with the changes that I went out and I researched. I did the work and I trialed and errored and discovered what worked best for my body. That is where I found the most results. It wasn't necessarily coming from any one practitioner. It was coming from me, my devotion to self, my devotion to my health. And the health coaching certification I did really opened the doors to just how many approaches to health and well-being there are, and how different people work differently, and different diets work best for different people as well, and how it really is a personal exploration. And so I so advocate for people to empower themselves to do some research, to try some different things. It can be really helpful to have guidance along the path, because if you're not familiar with navigating nutrition and supplements and health and well-being, and it's all very new to you, there's a lot of like conflicting information, and it is important to be able to sift through what is actually appropriate and what is not, because some things can be harming for the body. And it's best to learn that not the hard way, although sometimes we do have to learn it the hard way. But yeah, I do encourage you to work with someone if you feel like that makes you feel more confident and comfortable in your experience and in your body. Um, and yeah, I'm going to talk more about what I can bring to the table if it is something you want to explore for yourself. But first, let us talk about some of the diets I have explored and experienced over the last decade, more than a decade. I started exploring diets in teenage years, and it didn't necessarily start from a healthy place. So let's just put that into the mix here. In the beginning, when I think for a lot of women as well, of my generation and older, is growing up, there was this kind of unhealthy diet culture. It was all about being really skinny, and fat was bad, and there were all these things that were bad for you, and that made like we didn't grow up feeling like we could nourish the body. It more felt like we had to starve the body to be worth anything, to be good enough. And so in high school, I started exploring a low sugar kind of diet. I didn't change too much. I minimized added sugars. I think I removed most added sugars from my diet, and I would have some fruit, but that's about it. And I wanted to do that. I can't really remember why at the time, but I remember I was really getting into health. I'd probably started yoga by that stage. Yes, I'd started yoga by that stage. I was getting more into health and well-being, and I was wanting to learn more about my body, and how I could better take care of it and how I could feel better. And I remember when I did that, I must have done it for about 60 days. Don't quote me on any of this because I could be wrong, but I remember it was around 60 days, maybe a bit longer, where I went low sugar, and I felt great. I remember feeling like just more connected to my body and more energized overall. But it didn't last long. I couldn't make it sustainable in that I felt it was really hard to avoid temptation over time. And because I had those issues with my hormones already, losing my menstrual cycle, there was already some stuff going on in my body. This was before I got really, really unwell as well, just to note that. Um, yeah, I think that craving started to kick in a little bit more, and the obsessiveness around food started to kick in a little bit more. And I started to kind of judge myself and criticize myself and put meaning and value to nutrition in terms of how much like how worthy I was and how good I was, in relation to how healthy I ate. And so there started to be this little crossover of developing an unhealthy relationship to food. And that's when later down the line, when my menstrual cycle came back, my hormones went crazy, depression kicked in, I started binge eating, was completely burnt out, nervous system fried, all the things happened all at once. So all those symptoms I mentioned earlier, that's when they really kicked in at this stage. And that is when the I lent into the binge eating diet. Now, obviously, it's not a actual diet; it's more disordered eating. Um, and I would say this is the area of the point on the spectrum where extreme diets did not save my life, but it did show me a lot about myself. And obviously, while I don't recommend the path of binge eating at all, it really is symbolic of unresolved emotions in the body, traumas in the body, just imbalances physically, it could be hormonally, bacterially, all these different things. I do feel like it was a really important part of my life personally. And I very much, it has taught me so much about myself and so much about my body. And it has really guided me into the work that I now do. So, in that way, it has shown me a lot of purpose in my life, even though that time of my life was filled with suffering and pain and heartache and just so much disconnect from myself as a person. Looking back, I do not know how I made it through that time. It was a really dark time in my life. And the binge eating, the food, in some ways helped, in some ways kept me numb. So I didn't have to feel all the things. Um, so in that way, it might have saved my life. Like it gave me something to look forward to. It's just eating. And although it was really damaging for my physical body over time, and it was also perpetuating the cycle of suffering, it was, a coping mechanism I lent on. I think for that time in my life where I did not have the tools to manage my emotions and cope any better, it did help me through that. It helped me while I learned the tools to better manage my health and my well-being. And in that way, I feel like it did contribute to really saving my life and to getting me through a dark, dark period of my life. But like I mentioned, it's not something like don't look into just binge eating for the sake of it. Like it was something I did uncontrollably. I tried to stop and it just did not happen. I just couldn't for whatever reason. I was so addicted to it. And it took a long time for me to rebuild my trust in my body and rebuild a healthy relationship to food. And it is something still to this day where I am very intentional about my relationship to food because of my history. It is part of what has shaped who I am today and my relationship to my body. And so it is something I really, truly, deeply value is working in harmony with food and being mindful and intentional about how I eat and um, what I put into my body, how my relationship to food, how I view food, and how if I feel any elements of self-criticism or judgment for eating a certain thing, I still check in on myself on those things because of my history and because there were those really dark periods and how I relied on food for so long. So that was that phase of my life. And because of all of that, and I started to become really unwell and I started to gain weight and feel really sick, that is what led me down the path of really researching food in terms of therapeutic, like using nutrition therapeutically and realizing like, oh, I could maybe like I'm not doing so good, even though the doctors say I'm fine and X, Y, Z, all the common things that we hear nowadays, or we where we feel unsupported and unheard in clinical settings. Even all of that, I knew something was off in my body, and so it guided me to do more research, and it guided me to see nutritionists and work with practitioners in a more holistic sense as well. And based on all my symptoms, someone that I went to see recommended a candida diet, which is like an antifungal diet. to cleanse some of the candida from the body. That candida can manifest, it's a naturally occurring yeast in the body, but it can become pathogenic and create kind of fungal like symptoms. There's athlete's foot, you can have digestive upsets. There's thrush in the body, so that can be in the mouth, that can be vaginally, you can get jock itch, things, skin conditions, or like ringworm, those kinds of things can be related to fungal issues in the body. And so that is where I started to explore the antifungal approach, which is really like low sugar, removing sugars from the body, focusing on whole foods, removing processed foods. I think probably maybe gluten and dairy at the time as well. And that did not work. Straight up, that did not work. There was this big conversation around die-off symptoms. If you've heard of die-off, which is a supposedly a reaction in the body where when you're cleansing and detoxing, as you're eliminating and removing toxins from the body, your body can kind of flare up with symptoms as it is cleansing and processing, uh, like clearing some of the things out of the system. However, that so-called die-off experience was continuous. It never ended for me. And I kept thinking, oh, it's just die off, it's just die off. It wasn't. I was still eating foods that were incredibly triggering for my body. And I was still struggling with my nervous system and just feeling just feeling okay in myself, really. But nutritionally, I was eating foods that were still very inflammatory. And so, even with the practitioners I was seeing at that time, they didn't pick up on this. Or if they did, they didn't let me know. And so, this is where I kept doing more research for myself to figure out what is going on, because I'm doing this cleanse. Supposedly, it's supposed to fix these issues, and it's not fixing the issues. I was also taking some supplements at the time, and yeah, it just wasn't really doing what I wanted it to do. I was still bloated. I had so much digestive pain. That was probably one of the worst symptoms, is being looking like I was pregnant every day, feeling so much pain in my gut. Of course, there was the chronic pain throughout my whole body, and all like the PMS symptoms, endless hunger, binge eating, all those things. And at this time, when I was doing the antifungal diet as well, I was still struggling with binge eating. So there probably would have been times where I would have relapsed. I might have had like a month or two where I was really good, quote unquote, where I really stuck to what I was supposed to be doing. Um, and the binges I would have had would have been in alignment with the diet, but I would still overeat. Uh, but that overall, it just was not working. And it took me years of more research and trial and error and coming to a place where my relationship with food was actually okay for me to change my nutrition. So that's one of the things that I think made it so hard for me to heal at the time, was that I I had some of the knowledge and the awareness, but no matter how much I tried, I could not stop binge eating. And that's because I still had so much stress and unresolved emotion in the body, and energy blockages. And also, what was contributing to that was the fact that I wasn't eating the right food for my body at the time. And so I think because I was constantly eating food that was re-triggering my system, it was perpetuating that cycle as well. So next is the diet that truly did, that I feel like at the time did save my life. Honestly, within a month, I felt like a 180 shift. Now, noting before this, my relationship to food had already improved drastically. I had, if I think I had stopped binging, but if I hadn't, they were few and far between. Few and far between. I think that's the saying. Um, Yeah, my relationship to food, I'd done so much healing. It was around the pandemic era. So I had a lot of time at home, a lot of time with myself to be with food and be with my relationship to my body and my creativity and come back home to myself. And so that really supported me and helped me. And so this diet that I was like, oh my goodness, all my symptoms are aligned with these trigger foods. And that was the two names for it, the anti inflammatory protocol or the autoimmune protocol. So, what I had realized was I was displaying autoimmune symptoms that were not picked up. They were not picked up in the blood test. They were not picked up by doctors. They were not picked up by anyone I saw, but I was displaying autoimmune symptoms. And I have an autoimmune workshop on my website that you can have a look at. And I talk more about the stages of autoimmunity. But I was in the phase, I still to this day do not have a diagnosable autoimmune condition, but I was displaying the pre symptoms. And you can have pre autoimmune symptoms before developing a condition. And when you have those pre symptoms, that is when you really want to get on top of it before you develop a condition. And that is very much symptomatic based. There are tests that you can have a look into as well, but I feel like you can really identify it from symptoms in your body as well. And so, autoimmune, that's to do with the immune system. Some say like a dysregulated immune system. I think it's an immune system that is doing the best it can with what it has. And it is just needing a bit of extra support. And so, the kinds of symptoms related to that, the inflammation, the pain, the symptoms that are they can just move throughout the body and impact almost every system within the body. And so when I started that anti-inflammatory protocol, which is what I've taught on, I have my 21-day anti-inflammatory reset, and I have a free workshop that talks about it on my website as well. Within a month, my bloating had disappeared, and I felt better than ever. And at this stage, I still hadn't like lost weight. I was still probably around 90 kgs. I am quite a tall person, so that spreads out quite well in my body, but I was still overweight, probably around 90 kgs. And in the beginning, yeah, within that first month, I just felt better. I felt like I was not constantly reacting to food. I felt like my digestion had improved, my pain had subsided, and my depression was lifting. Literally everything was changing. And that was just 1 month after years and years and years and years of pain and struggle and suffering and trying to find the answer. Um, but that was just the beginning. That autoimmune protocol was just the beginning. And I continued focusing on this. I had breaks in between because I was still navigating things with my diet a little bit and in terms of my relationship to food, but I was also doing different tests and trialing different supplements and doing different protocols to see what was going on. But then I started really consistently doing the autoimmune protocol. Probably did it for 3 to 6 months. And yeah, that's when I started losing weight effortlessly. And it was not about eating less. I was eating so much. I was eating all of the right things. I've always been a big eater. And so it wasn't because I was eating less necessarily. I was just eating these foods and I started to lose weight. I dropped down to about 80 kgs. And then, yeah, it continued from there. And so I was sitting at 80 kgs, just under 80 or just over 80 for a good couple of years there. And that felt like my base weight. And I was like feeling more at home in my body. And so that was really, I felt so relieved that I had found something that was working for me. But I was still so interested in diet. I was like, okay, there's still a couple things lingering in my body. There's still a couple symptoms. I want to explore more. I feel really confident and comfortable in my body now in terms of my relationship to food and how I can work with diet and nutrition and see what it does in my body. And I know the signs and symptoms of when something isn't working. I know the signs and symptoms of when it is. And so that is what led me to probably another couple years later, I tried the carnivore diet. So this is all meat, all animal products. Some people include dairy. I did not have dairy because dairy is still something that I am healing my relationship to, and it's not something that sits well in my body at this stage in my life. So I avoided dairy, but I would have only animal products and salt and some herbs. So things like rosemary, I would have some herbs. That's it. I was eating mostly red meat, beef and lamb. I had eggs and some seafood as well, fish and prawns. And I did that for about 3 months, 3 months of just animal foods. Oh my goodness, what a journey. I want to say before I go into it, I want to say I don't recommend the carnivore diet to people. Um, Particularly if you have a challenging relationship to food, if you don't really know your symptoms, if you haven't tried other things first, definitely do not jump into it. It is something I was preparing myself for a while to go into the carnivore diet, and I had already been eating a meat heavy diet on the autoimmune protocol. So, the anti inflammatory diet autoimmune protocol is very meat based with vegetables and some fruit, grains, legumes, all of that is removed. And so I'd already been eating a lot of meat for a long time and I was very comfortable and familiar with that. But if it is something like I would work with someone one on one, in my health coaching programs and things to determine what is suitable for them. But I'm going to share my experience, and I'm not saying jump into this. I'm saying if it resonates, you can do research for yourself and you can talk to me about it, or you can talk to your practitioner about it. Although I will say most practitioners that I've come across do not agree with a carnivore diet. Um, and yet, let's share my experience of how it impacted me. So, I found the carnivore diet challenging in the beginning. Like your body adjusts, getting used to that keto state, not having sugar, not having carbohydrates. It was a bit of a challenge. And digestively, I was interested to see what would happen because there's all this talk about fiber and how we need fiber to go to the toilet and to regulate things. But over time, things settled down. Um, and overall, I definitely felt things clear up in my body. My energy was consistent. I didn't need as much sleep. I felt, yeah, really energetically consistent. I would say I never had like a burst of energy. I was always kind of just like neutral, just neutral, but like energized neutral, but never like, yeah, energized. Yeah, symptoms cleared up. I definitely had even less pain, which I was already, doing really good on that end. I wasn't experiencing as much pain, but I was having, yeah, I felt so free in my body, so mobile in my body, was never bloated. And overall, it felt in a more spiritual sense, I felt my channel open up. I felt so much more connected to God or the universal source, whatever you want to call it. I felt my channel open up and I was so receptive to messages and insights. And it actually, at that time in my life, it led me on a path that completely transformed my life as well. Working with different coaches and making different decisions for myself, I felt like my connection to my energy and my spirituality just deepened immensely. It was profound and so beautiful. And so this is where I also want to talk about how food is not just, the physical body. It interacts with how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to the world around us, this world nature, it is such a big component of our overall well-being, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. And so I feel like for everyone, explore nutrition, explore your diet, get to know your body better through your diet. It is completely life changing. And if you are struggling with chronic health conditions, if you're struggling with your health, it can save your life, or it can feel like it saved your life. But for a lot of people, it literally does save their life too. But it can feel like there's a big weight has been lifted off your shoulders and you can feel like yourself again. And that is one of the things that I'm so grateful for, is learning how to eat for my body. I feel like I'm me again. There was a period of a few years there where I was so disconnected from myself, so detached, so unwell. I didn't even know left from right. I didn't know who I was in any way, shape, or form. And exploring diet opened up a whole world of new parts of myself that I did not before have capacity to hold and to explore and dive into. So I just, for everyone watching this, whatever it is, explore your diet. And this is why I do the work that I do. This is why I do the reset, the 21-day reset. This is why I do my programs, is to give you guided support with exploring and navigating diet, because there is so much conflicting information out there and it can get really confusing. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can go down rabbit holes and paths that are actually not going to support your body long term, but it might even be like it might make things feel worse, or you might be more challenged in your body, or yeah, there's just a lot of information out there that is not really helpful. But there's also a lot of information out there that is. So it's using your discernment as well and trusting in your body to make the right decision. I really want you to feel empowered to trust yourself and to trust your body. And if you don't, talk to someone, talk to me, talk to a practitioner and be like, hey, I really want to make these changes, but I am struggling to trust myself in making these decisions. Because building trust in yourself, that is one of the most important steps so that you can make these decisions for yourself and that you can feel empowered and you can trust that you are going to do the right thing for yourself at any given time. So since I did the carnivore diet, I stopped doing that. I didn't want to do it long term because I feel like for a lot of people who rely on it, it can be a band aid for underlying imbalances in the body. And it was also, it was quite a dull way to eat, if I'm being honest. It did teach me, this is the other thing that it really taught me, is how to be with food with completely like no emotions. I found eating one of the least pleasurable things to do at that time. I was literally just eating to fuel my body. It was not super fun. There was not much taste. There was not much excitement. Um, it was quite bland and, not very exciting. And so there was no way for me to use food to cope with my emotions. I had to be with my emotions. I had to feel it all because I was just eating food that there was none of that like looking forward to a meal, because I really didn't. And I just felt I just wasn't thinking about food. I didn't want to think about food at that time. So that was a really, coming from a person who would obsessively think about food, that was a really interesting experience. So for that reason, I'm so deeply grateful for that experience, and also for opening this pathway of a more deep connection to the divine and to spirit and to my body and to the non-physical and to my energy. After I did the carnivore diet, I stay on an anti-inflammatory based diet overall. So I eat what I say 95% whole foods. I will occasionally have a treat every now and then. One of my favorite foods is ice cream. And so, on the rare occasion, I'll go out and grab myself a vegan ice cream, or um, whatever it is that I really, really enjoy to eat. But most of the time, 95% of the time, I will eat whole foods and I minimize grains. I tend to stay away from legumes, although I sometimes might have some. If I have nuts and seeds, it's in very small quantities. And I stay away from gluten and I stay away from dairy. Those two, I tend to be quite gluten, definitely. I just stay away from it because it's not worth it for me. So I stay on that anti-inflammatory based diet and focusing on whole foods. So 95% of the time, whole foods. And I just eat what feels best for my body day in, day out. And I'm very intentional about it. I mentioned how I'm very intentional about my food. And so every now and then I will explore different avenues and options of what I want to try next, what I want to do to support my body, if I want to try a specific detox protocol, if I want to try reintroducing a certain food and noticing how my body responds, if I want to try some new supplements. I have this baseline of eating anti-inflammatory. I know how to come back to my my baseline, and I can explore from that space. So currently something that I've been exploring is oxalates, which when you do the carnivore diet, you obviously remove all plant foods, and oxalates or oxalic acid is in plant foods. And so basically what oxalic acid is a compound or a toxin that can sit within plant foods in some higher quantities than others. And it can bind to minerals in the body like calcium, and it forms oxalates, which can be really sharp structures that can sit in your joints, they can sit in your digestive system, they can sit anywhere in your body, and they can lead to kidney stones, and they can end up causing this kind of systemic inflammation over time, and that can lead to pain and different symptoms, different kind of random, strange symptoms in the body. Because the oxalic acids binds to minerals, it is also then kind of stealing minerals from the food that you eat, taking it away from your body. And because so many people are already mineral deficient, partly because of the soils, partly because of the diets we eat, it is further perpetuating this mineral imbalance for so many people. And we need these minerals to naturally detoxify through the body, to naturally maintain our homeostasis and all cellular function. And so there's been these trends where, there was a veganism trend where so many people went vegan, and the green smoothies and superfoods. And so many of those foods actually have a high oxalic acid content. And that means we are putting the body under a high load of oxalates, and the body has to clear them out and filter it out through the digestive system, through the urinary system, through the kidneys, through the colon. And if we're overwhelming the body with this toxin over and over and over again on a day-to-day basis, it will build up in the body and it will create those symptoms. And so currently I'm exploring an intentional low oxalate diet to see if I can slowly remove some of the buildup of oxalates from my body and replenish minerals in my body as well. And that will naturally support my body to detoxify without all these added supplements and protocols. So there's a specific way to go about it. And this, I'm very interested in this exploration with oxalates as well. It can be something that takes a long time. It's not something you want to rush into. So this, like I said, with the carnivore diet, not jumping into it, because what a lot of people describe in the carnivore diet is something called oxalate dumping, which is where your body, because you're no longer consuming them, your body starts to offload it from the body and starts to detoxify, and it can put a high strain on the detox pathways, which can actually cause more harm than good depending on the person. And so you want to do it slowly and you want to do it mindfully. And it is a long-term thing. So it's something that I've been navigating for a little while now. And so with this as well, because I do my 21-day anti-inflammatory reset, and oxalates contribute to a lot of inflammation in the body. The next reset that I'm doing, which is in July 6th is when we start, is focusing in on oxalates. So going to educate everyone around what they are. So going into much more detail than I have in this podcast, talking about how to safely lower the load and how to safely cleanse the body from oxalates, which foods have high oxalate content, which foods have lower oxalate content, and how to prioritize and how to transition, like what are some food swaps. We're going to go into how you can remineralize the body. And yeah, it gives everyone an opportunity to really explore their nutrition and diet with guidance and support. And like it can help so many different symptoms as well. I've got a full list on my website. Can be to do with nerve pains, neurological issues, depression, anxiety, fungal issues, joint pains, arthritis, vulvodynia or reoccurring thrush, UTIs, kidney stones, kidney issues. Honestly, it can impact so many areas of the body. But there's a full list on my website as well to see if it's, if you're experiencing some of those symptoms. And this is what one of my intentions is with my work is to educate people and to give people the opportunity to practice and try to explore their diet in a new way and to trust themselves on that path, to trust their bodies. If something feels off, probably because something is off. And sometimes we will have little flare ups of symptoms. And then it's learning how to know when those little flare ups are part of the process or when it is actually this perpetuation of something, when we are still getting ourselves triggered, our bodies are still getting triggered by certain foods. And so we work with the nervous system as well as nutrition and how we can actually apply this into our lives so it feels more sustainable. So it feels like a little bit more fun, a little bit more adventurous, and not just like, oh, I have to follow a diet, but like, how cool is it that I get the opportunity to explore my body in a new way? So, if this is something that you're interested in exploring, if you want to learn how to work with nutrition, if you want to learn how to work with different diets, if you want to uncover some of the underlying mechanisms and reasons for why your body's experiencing symptoms, chronic symptoms, and you want to feel a little bit more joyous through the process. You want to feel more supported. You want to work with your nervous system as well, because maybe you've already tried different diets and you feel like it's not working, or you feel like you get stuck in this rut and you get frustrated, or you can't trust anyone, or you can't trust your body, and you're not sure where to turn next. This is the space for you, because I so acknowledge that I have felt so disempowered at times. I've felt so vulnerable, so frustrated at anyone who would ever give me advice. I was like, you don't know. You don't know my experience. And when you're in the thick of chronic health conditions, it can feel like that. We can get so defensive because we're in this space of literally feeling like we need to protect ourselves constantly, like because we don't trust ourselves and we don't trust almost anyone, because the experience can be so confusing and unsettling. And so I completely understand that. I lived that for years and years and years, but I also know that there is a way through, and it starts with getting curious about your body and becoming open to experiences and giving feedback. I so love it when clients come to me and they are willing to give feedback, being like, hey, Sophia, this actually isn't working for me. Amazing. I can work with that. I can work with that. Let's take a new approach. Let's make this little shift. It's not, I think sometimes people want to see someone and get their problems fixed straight away, and that's not necessarily how it works. Sometimes, you find the needle in the haystack straight away, but sometimes there's a journey. But how can we make this journey, this exploration into the body, joyous and exciting and interesting? Like that is what is going to help you heal as well, because then your nervous system settles. It feels safer in the body because it's leading with curiosity instead of protection. A nervous system that feels like it has to constantly be on guard is a nervous system that is of a body that feels unsafe, that feels like it's unsafe in its environment. And so we want to practice feeling safe in the body, and we want to get into the space where we can be curious. And yeah, when you work with me as well, I love feedback. I love hearing your experience because it helps me to learn, which helps me give more helpful resources and insights to everyone that I'm working with. And so it is so much a collaboration. And while I've been on this path for basically like a decade now, over a decade with nutrition and studying health and well-being, there is always so much to learn. And I so value when people come to me with their open hearts, or even, with their closed hearts, and they say, like, hey, I'm really struggling with this. I feel like this should be working and it's not. And I get it. I've so been there. And it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel frustrated. And working with someone who understands that and receiving support can be so helpful. And so, yeah, I hope this episode has given you a little bit of insight as well of my journey and how working with nutrition and diet can be so liberating, how there's so many layers to it. And how much it can contribute to healing your body. It really, truly can. And some of the health information we've been given, like the standard food pyramids, are not effective for a lot of people. If you have chronic health conditions, chances are you need to take a more quote unquote extreme approach to nutrition. I don't even think of it as extreme. I think of it as therapeutic, a more therapeutic approach to nutrition to support your body through this phase. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your body. It means your body's going through a particular change and it needs different things. And that is not a bad thing. That is a good thing. It means your body is communicating to you. It is showing you, it is telling you what it needs in this moment. And you then have the option and the choice to provide that for it, right? That is a really beautiful way of rekindling trust in the body. So I will leave it there for today. If you're interested in joining the 21-day anti-inflammatory reset, where we dive into oxalates, I'll pop the link in the show notes below, in the description below. You can also reach out to me on social media. You can find me on my website. All the links will be down below. And if you have any questions, if you would like to share your experience with diets, or if you have any questions about diets, feel free to reach out. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions as well. Take care, and I'll see you all soon.